Well, if the state of California and Los Angeles won't hold anybody accountable, the feds certainly are going to try and make sure someone is held accountable for the Los Angeles wildfires. In a new lawsuit filed by the Trump administration Department of Justice against Southern California Edison regarding their negligence and their actions with the Los Angeles wildfires. We're going to get into a couple stories about all of that regarding the lawsuit and the negligence. We're going to talk about all that. But first, if you're part of the 87% who have not yet subscribed, please make sure you do. And also, YouTube rolled out some new feature for us small creators that if you really like this video and you think it should be seen by a lot more people, maybe here in California, you need to know this type of news and this political commentary, you can go down and hit the hype button. That helps us in the algorithm. That helps, I guess, hype us or get us into the algorithm for more people to find us and help spread the news about this channel. And I really appreciate it. It's a great way. And best part is it's absolutely free. It doesn't cost you anything to hype our channel. Just hit that little button. You can hype it up and more people will come and find us. So let's get into that first story right now.
We begin with breaking news. The acting U.S. Attorney General has just announced the filing of lawsuits against SoCal Edison in connection with two deadly Southern California fires.
The Eaton Fire and the Fairview Fire in Riverside County both damaged federal land and property. KTLA 5's Karina Winter live now in downtown L.A. with the details.
Lou and Glenn, that news conference just wrapped up at tens of millions of dollars in damages and also fire suppression costs. That's how much the acting U.S. attorney says they're seeking from SoCal Edison for these two devastating wildfires.
The Eaton Fire lawsuit alleges that Southern California Edison negligently failed to properly maintain its power and transmission lines in the area where the fire ignited on a windy night in January. Negligence that had deadly and very costly consequences.
And you heard it there, Bill Asali, alleging that the utility company was negligent in its involvement in these two deadly wildfires. The Eaton Fire in January killed at least 19 people in Altadena and burned over 10,000 structures. While the cause of the fire is still under investigation, SoCal Edison has admitted that one of its transmission lines may have started this blaze. The acting U.S. attorney said the U.S. Forest Service incurred millions of dollars in costs to suppress the Eaton Fire and that they're now seeking.
This is always something that I find shocking about California is that it can always come back to the fact that these power and utility companies, which are public monopolies, by the way. So when I hear people on the left always talk about monopolies are bad, they always seem to conveniently leave out that public monopolies like utilities and electric companies and all that stuff, they're somehow not bad, but like monopolies, private monopolies are somehow bad, but this isn't bad. And they always seem to never be held responsible for this. It's the same thing that happened up in Paradise and different wildfires in the past several years. It always seems to come back to one electrical issue that, of course, started the whole wildfire. And then all of a sudden, somehow these companies got off the hook. And then the way they fix this, they just raise your rates.
More than $40 million in damages. As for the Fairview Fire back in 2022, this was in Hemet. It resulted in 2 deaths. Nearly 14,000 acres burned within the San Bernardino National Forest. CAL FIRE said this fire may have been started by SoCal Edison's equipment. 44 structures were also burned. The lawsuit alleges SCE failed to properly maintain its power and transmission lines in or around the area where the Fairview Fire ignited. The U.S. is now seeking to recover about $37 million in damages incurred by the Forest Service, including about $20 million for fire suppression costs. Officials also confirmed there are terms in this lawsuit to ensure SCE doesn't increase utility rates for customers to offset these damages. They don't want those costs being passed down to customers. So again, that was something that Asali emphasized during the news conference. They just filed this lawsuit today. Reporters asked him if they've received a response from SoCal Edison. They said not yet. We've also reached out to the utility company for comment. We'll let you know when they respond. That's the very latest here in downtown Los Angeles. Karina Winter, KTLA 5 News.
So that's the federal lawsuit filed by the Trump administration Department of Justice. If some people are already questioning whether or not because it's coming from Trump and all that stuff, whether it's just for show or it's for some sort of political purposes, I will say that there has been more and more evidence slowly coming out about the wildfires regarding negligence and changing records and trying to cover up any sort of mistreatment or misconduct by those electrical companies and power companies and different public utilities. So this next video dives into it a little bit more. We're going to get into this. It's a little bit of a longer video. This is from News Nation, but it talks about the kind of negligence and what they're finding regarding the wildfires.
8 months after the devastating Pacific Palisades fire reduced much of Los Angeles to ashes, we're learning about possible failures that led to the worst wildfire in California's history. News Nation exclusively obtained documents that revealed missteps by officials in California. All those missteps contributed to the catastrophic losses. 12 people died as a result of the Palisades fire. The total economic cost is between $18 and $20 billion for insured losses alone. President Trump was asked about how Governor Gavin Newsom handled the Palisades fire during an Oval Office press conference Wednesday afternoon. When asked if Congress should investigate claims of negligence, here's how the president responded.
They send the water out to the Pacific Ocean, so I demanded it be open. If that were open during the fire, before the fire, you wouldn't have had the fire because all the sprinklers would have worked in the houses. They had no water. As to investigation, I view it as a gross incompetence. I view it as an ideology that's wrong.
News Nation investigative correspondent Rich McHugh reviewed those documents. Rich, what did you learn?
Hi, Elizabeth. There were failures across the board. Before the fire, certainly during the fire, and after. We're learning of disturbing missteps that ultimately led to 12 people losing their lives and 7,000 structures being destroyed. When the Palisades fire started on January 7th, Michael Valentine was one of the first to see it. He shot these videos as his wife called 911, and he waited and waited for help to come.
I did not see any firefighters up there.
Why do you think that is?
That's the question. I don't know. I wish I knew the answer to that. I have no idea. I have no idea why that is.
Today, his home is gone, and Valentine is among the thousands suing the state and the city.
Wow. At least the stoop is still here.
And that's where it started, right?
Yes, exactly.
Or just beyond that?
Just beyond that. Yeah, but that's roughly where it started.
We're here on the Skull Rock Trailhead, where authorities believe simmering embers from a New Year's Eve fire ultimately was the start of the January 7th fire, the Palisades fire that swept down this ridge, ultimately taking 7,000 structures before it was finished. All the while, the Santa Ynez Reservoir over there sat empty. Shortly before the fire,
we all know that's been a huge issue, is the Santa Ynez Reservoir that was not filled up because they were working on it, and it looked like it took over a year for them to fix these problems. And they knew that it wasn't filled, and they knew this was wildfire season, they knew this was high wind season, yet for some reason the reservoir was not filled, and they don't have any good answer for this. It's just one of those, political gobbledygook sort of answers of, well, we had to empty it because of X, Y, and Z. But in reality, it took over a year. It took millions of dollars to try and fix it. They had not fixed it yet. They also tried to use the excuse that it was emptied because of the water pressure of all the wildfires and the firefighters using it. So it is kind of frustrating. I can imagine if you're someone watching your home about to be burned down, that all of a sudden you're looking over at that reservoir going, why was this reservoir never filled, knowing that we're in a wildfire path in a place that is very dangerous or susceptible to wildfires.
Governor Gavin Newsom pre-deployed hand crews and 110 fire trucks to Southern California.
To Pacific Palisades. They
Not
went
one?
elsewhere. Not one. Went to Pacific Palisades. We had a brush fire within 5 days prior to the Palisades fire starting. So the first place you should pre-deploy, in my view, is you'd send them to where you had a recent fire, and that didn't happen. Nor did any National Guard troops arrive at the Palisades fire site before the fire started.
Roger.
Interesting. Gavin Newsom didn't properly use the National Guard, even though he complained about when President Trump used the National Guard down in Los Angeles to quell protests. He didn't deploy the National Guard, which he has control over as the governor of the state of California. He didn't deploy them to try and stop all fires happening in Los Angeles. Interesting.
Bailey represents over 3,000 Palisades victims suing the state of California, Los Angeles, and the LA Department of Water and Power. Internal records Bailey has obtained show what he believes are massive failures. While the Santa Ynez Reservoir sat empty, LADWP was supposed to put the Palisades reservoir into service. That never happened. And on the day of the fire, documents show that LADWP acknowledged they should have de-energized the grid.
Would have been avoided.
And then they tried to cover their tracks.
The person that was supposed to shut the power off didn't arrive until much later in the day. And when he finally arrived, he determined that he couldn't shut the power off and the fire was at the back door and he had to leave. About 3 weeks later, that same technician goes back into the log records and changes the time that he said he arrived from 6 o'clock in the evening back to 1:45 in the afternoon, a change of about 5.5 hours.
If you had to characterize the state and the city's response to these fires on January 7th, what would you say?
Competent.
Way to put it.
The redefining incompetence. This is what you'd expect to see in a third world country. You don't expect to see this in the United States or in the state of California.
Never in a million years would have I suspected that the city and the LADWP would seek to manufacture facts to fit their narrative in order to avoid liability. It's absolutely disgusting.
Now, CAL FIRE just confirmed to me that they did not pre-deploy any fire trucks to the Palisades before the fire. We are still awaiting comment from LADWP. We're also hearing that a Senate investigation into all of this is imminent.
All right, I did want to pull this up really quickly. This is what I had mentioned before about the fact that they were trying to put more of these lines underground, but this goes all the way back to 2016 with Governor Jerry Brown. Governor Moonbeam vetoed this bill to bury more of these lines, and people are trying to say, well, why haven't we buried these lines? This has been an ongoing issue. And to the fact that they have changed the records, this is from ABC7 Eyewitness News. They released an article saying Palisades fire victims accuse LADWP of altering records. So they have also reported on the fact that they're trying to go back and change the records. It goes on to say they claim the utility tampered with records for a reservoir that was empty at the time of the fire, as well as power lines in the area. The new allegations accuse LADWP of failing to comply with its own policy, then changing the policy and altering a computer log to erase an over 4-hour delayed arrival to shut off power to the Pacific Palisades on January 7th. Quote, they're altering records. They're denying things that can't be denied, said Michael Valentine, who lost his home in the Pacific Palisades fire. You know, it seems to be that they're doing everything they can to get out from responsibility. It's beyond shocking. It's actually quasi-criminal. If you recognize that name, it was the same guy in that last video. Regarding the 117 million gallon Santa Ynez reservoir that was empty when the fire broke out, Public Records Act requests retrieved LADWP show that the reservoir's cover should have been inspected monthly and by divers underneath on an annual basis, but it was last inspected in 2021. So this whole idea that it was not operatable or it was not an operation that needed to be fixed, they hadn't actually inspected it or tried to fix it in the past 4 years. In November 2024, November, in fact, this is a quote, right before the fire, the DWP begins identifying there's a problem in their compliance with their own policy, said Roger Bell, one of the lawyers representing Palisades fire victims. Quote, why don't we just change the policy to make it every 3 years? Had they done the required inspections that their own policy required, this small tear in the reservoir could have been identified and would have been fixed without the need to drain the reservoir at all. A computer log was also obtained through a Public Records Act request that shows that at 1:49 p.m. on January 7th, there was an order to shut off power to the Palisades as the fire raged out of control, but it had to be done manually, and the technician didn't arrive until after 6 p.m. and had to evacuate, so power was left on in the Palisades as the winds increased, obviously making it even more dangerous because now you have these live electrical lines flying all over the place, which can cause even more fires, especially in densely populated areas. Quote, why in the world 22 days later would a DWP employee go back in this log record and try to recreate the timeline? The roads weren't then shut down, so why would it take somebody that long to get to that substation? Looks like a cover-up. So there is a lot of questions, and I wanted to bring this up. So the CEO of LADWP, just as a reminder, whenever there's incompetence or failures at the public level, I always like to bring this up because it just reminds people of where your tax dollars are going, that the CEO of LADWP, who has not yet stepped down or resigned over any of this, she makes about $750,000 a year, and this was prior to her being hired. And all of these issues are coming out, and somehow she still has a job. So there's a lot of these allegations, stuff is starting to percolate. And I imagine that this story is not going anywhere anytime soon. And it's probably just going to get worse for those LA officials. And the fact that there aren't more people who are being recalled, I thought Mayor Karen Bass should have been recalled over this. The fact that she was completely incompetent, she was over in Ghana or something like that on some sort of diplomatic trip, which I don't understand why the mayor of Los Angeles is on some sort of diplomatic trip during wildfire season, and she had to be rushed back and she was not really reachable or they couldn't get a hold of her. You have the LADWP CEO who's being paid $750,000 a year. Now we're seeing all of this incompetence and sort of these errors and possible cover-ups by people within her own agency. Then you also have SoCal Edison, who is also negligent in the fact that they were not shutting down power lines, and the Fed lawsuit alleges and goes into the fact that they were negligent in how they handled this, and that the electricity company was not ready to shut down the grid, and they were not ready for all these wildfires that were happening. And also on top of that, you have Gavin Newsom, who didn't send the National Guard as soon as he should have, or that LA didn't send firefighters as soon as they should have. This, I think, is only the tip of the iceberg regarding these wildfires. And I said back in January and February when we were covering this, that there's going to be so much stuff coming out about this story. And I think it's only just begun, because you have lawsuits by residents, which are going through the California Superior Court. You have now the federal lawsuit, which is being orchestrated by U.S. Attorney Palisades and the Trump DOJ. So you have it coming from both ends, state and federal. There's going to be a lot of discovery. We're going to see a lot of information. This is not going any easier. And I believe that there's going to be people who are going to have to answer for all of this incompetence and negligence. But let me know your thoughts in the comments, what you think about all of this. Who's negligent? Who's incompetent? Who shares the responsibilities? Is it everybody from LADWP, from Mayor Karen Bass, from Gavin Newsom? Do they all share responsibility? Who's more responsible than the other? Let me know in the comments what you think, and we'll see you on the next one. Later.